welcome everybody to the Dodeca update and roadmap. Got a lot of exciting stuff to show you today. Been working hard on the product, so I'd hope to have a poll for this. I don't think we got it quite together for the poll, so I understand there are some people probably who haven't seen Dodeca before. Some are customers as well, so I'm going to give a brief introduction to what Dodeca is, but let's first kind of dive into the presentation. So let me do this into it. So just a little bit about the company. I'm the founder of Applied OLAP. Been around for 22 years now doing Essbase and spreadsheets. It's important that we're employee owned. We've taken no external investment at all. So we really have this sustainable business model, kind of built the old fashioned way. And we do everything in-house as well. But a little bit about me. I'm the person who came up with Dodeca, dreamed it up. My team has written it here. Done a lot of other things. I was an Oracle ACE director for a long time. I was one of the original 5 Microsoft Excel MVPs in the world. So that was exciting as well. And my hobbies, ski and climb. I actually live in Colorado in the wintertime now and ski every day, literally. But a couple more have been added recently. So grandpa, I've been a grandpa for a while now, but been enjoying doing that. But I've also become a caregiver. So my wife has Alzheimer's now. So that takes up a lot of my time. That's why I don't blog as much. So in any case, I want to mention it because she's kind of been instrumental in this company. She took care of everything else in our family so that I could actually create a company. So it's been very important. But this is my 24th year in a row speaking at Essbase conferences. And on the weekend, we actually went over to our storage units. My wife wanted to pull out some Halloween decorations. I happened to find a couple of things. My pass from Solutions 99. I actually started speaking on this conference, by the way, at Dimensions 96. That was my first one. I also found the entry card you had to wear around your neck to go to the party there. It was at Universal Studios. I remember going on the roller coaster, the Incredible Hulk roller coaster, probably about 15 or 20 times. I'm a pilot. I like to fly aerobatics when I get a plane that's capable of that, of course. And that Hulk is kind of like that. So in any case, I also want to mention that we do have a giveaway at this particular conference. We have a little fun question that you can go out and answer. We're going to give away a $200 MasterCard gift card. MasterCard is one of our customers, by the way. So we're going to give that away at the conclusion of this. Now, for each one of the 3 sessions our team is giving, by the way, we are giving away 3 separate cards. So there are 3 separate giveaways. If you register for Tim Faitch's solutions earlier, then this is a different one. There's another chance to win. All right. So just really briefly in the agenda. So because we have people here who haven't seen Dodeca before, I'm going to spend a few minutes just talking about what Dodeca is. So kind of give you some context. I'm going to talk a little bit about Dodeca 7.5 through 7.8 and some features we put in that. Dodeca started out life, 15 years ago or so, and we've been progressing through the versions, and we keep adding functionality. I'm going to go into the roadmap and talk a little bit, actually quite a lot about version 8. So most of this presentation is going to be about version 8. So just a little bit about what is Dodeca. So what are we trying to solve? Well, during this conference this week, I'm sure you've seen SmartView. Probably a lot of you guys use SmartView. People love spreadsheets. I was one of those people. I was an Excel guru. I used to write Excel books, by the way. So I really love spreadsheets, right? So people can do just about anything in spreadsheets. The problem is people can do just about anything in spreadsheets, right? It's really hard to govern them. And what happens is you end up with the poor workbook quality. I'm going to talk a lot about poor workbook quality in my session tomorrow. It's become a huge issue, I think, in companies. It's kind of a hidden issue, but it's something that I think if you can tune in tomorrow for my session for spreadsheet design, I think it'll probably open some eyes. In any case, this poor workbook quality leads to risk of error, of course, and productivity losses, which is always bad. So that's really the reason that we created this product called Dodeca. And when we architected the product, when I first thought about it, I thought about the different Oracle EPM products. So at that time, it was all EPM products. Obviously, there are cloud versions of those now. But I thought about HFR. So the idea for FR is that it's easy to use, right? Anybody can use it. They go pick the report they want. They select the point of view. They run the report, and they get the report, right? They get the report, and the thing is, it runs the same way every single time. So it's very dependable. It's very repeatable. So it's very, very accurate, in other words. So we like that aspect of HFR. But people don't like HFR a lot of times because it's not Excel, right? So we looked at Excel as well and what SmartView does. The whole idea that you can bring data in from a database, but also that you have all that Excel functionality available, that you can paint business logic using Excel. Excel is the businessman's art pad, right? So that was, I thought, a very important piece as well. Then we looked at planning. And what is planning? Really, when you get down to it, it's a glorified data form product to get data into an Essbase database. So you get down to the very technical details. That's kind of what it is, right? It has these configurable actions though. So you can, for example, do a calculation based on a point of view. So that's a nice thing about planning. And when we looked at these three products, they all have their beauties. And in the Hyperion world, you have all three of them that you kind of have to use together, right? We wanted to make one product to put it all together. But the problem that we saw as well with these products is that sometimes they didn't meet the needs of what customers needed. They need to tailor the application. So I've seen people spend a lot of time and money writing VBA macros, for example, for SmartView, or tailoring planning to do exactly what they wanted to do. That becomes very costly. It's hard to maintain. So what we also did with Dodeca is we architected not just around the product, but actually permeating the product. Extensibility is just extremely robust. The whole idea is you can build just about anything that you want to build a tailored application. When we looked at the Gartner Magic Quadrants, and we've been doing that since we've been in business for 22 years now, we never really fit in one of those quadrants, right? There's quadrants for planning and for reporting solutions, BI, that type of thing. We never fit one of those. Well, we decided those, if there were a quadrant called high productivity spreadsheet application platform, that would be us. And we'd be a perfect fit in that. Unfortunately, there's not a quadrant called that, and we'd probably be the only player if there were. So I don't know where we'd fit. We'd be visionary, would be in the middle. I don't really know. Don't really compare to anybody else, right? So it's a very unique product. Just a quick look at what Dodeca looks like for those of you that haven't seen it before. So on the left-hand side, there's a selector that lets you select the report you want to see. You can click on the report. Those reports are typically based on Excel files that are based in our database server. So you get a clean copy of the report template every single time, kind of like what HFR does. You have a report template, gets married to the data at runtime. Same type of thing with Dodeca, except the template itself is an Excel file, right? You have point of view selectors, just like you see in HFR. The point of view selectors in Dodeca are driven directly off from Essbase. They're highly tailorable, though. You can really tailor those to fit specific needs. So doing things like, showing only an alternate hierarchy, something that's very, very easy to do in Dodeca. In the middle, you see a spreadsheet, right? So that spreadsheet is an Excel spreadsheet. The formulas are there, the formatting's there, print settings, conditional formatting, cell validation, all that kind of stuff works in Dodeca, right? Except it's in this protected environment. So notice it isn't Excel. So you don't have all the extra things that people can do in Excel that can break your application. So that's in a nutshell what Dodeca is and what it looks like. So the reason it's better and different is that, we do a lot of automation. So think about the steps you go through to produce a report in SmartView. You open up the right file, try to find that on a shared drive, right? And then you make sure that the members are set the proper way for this month. And for the other dimensions you want, of course. Then you connect to the right database, and then you have to refresh the data. You have to make sure it refreshes. Dodeca really automates all that, so it makes it a lot easier, faster, and really more dependable. It's repeatable. It's a repeatable process. In the end, what we see is people saving a lot of time and money, among other things. And one thing to note as well is that Dodeca doesn't run inside of Excel. So if you have those long-running Excel retrieves, that type of thing, or maybe it locks up Excel, that type of thing, that never happens with Dodeca because Dodeca doesn't use Excel at runtime. It's a separate application. Just a few of the customers that we have in the Dodeca world. Just move this window out of the way so I can see. There we go. I'm sorry. A few of the customers, we tend to keep customers a long time. I mentioned we have the sustainable business model. We've been in business since 1998. First product shipped in 1999. Wells Fargo and Chase have been continuous customers of ours with products since 1999. So they started out with our original product, Active OLAP for Essbase. They upgraded to Dodeca when it came out, about 2007, 2008 timeframe. Kroger, Big Lots, Super Value, HEB, all those have been customers since the early days. Now, Kroger's pretty interesting. They're our largest customer. They have 50,000 users of Dodeca using Essbase, 50,000, including employees out in grocery stores. So it's a pretty interesting use case. The other thing that's interesting about Kroger is they just recently did a huge cloud implementation. They went from a homegrown general ledger to Oracle Cloud Financials. And in doing so, they thought they may reduce the amount of users they have in Dodeca. They found that the user community may actually grow in Dodeca. They've actually hooked up Dodeca to their Oracle Cloud Financials through an Azure database. So it's been pretty interesting what they've done there at Kroger. All right, so enough of what Dodeca is, and if there are questions, please type them in the chat window. I'll take as much time as I can at the end to talk about them. So Let's talk a little bit. I only have one slide really on Dodeca 7.5 through 7.8. So a few things we introduced. I want to talk about some of these. Now, this is going to be really important for existing customers and maybe for some customers, some people who aren't customers yet. Maybe there's some things they want to do. I'm going to talk about each one in order. So Cascade on MDX. So most people know what a Cascade report is. In SmartView, you can do a Cascade where you have a template, and you choose a dimension or a series of dimensions and say, I want to cascade across this. And essentially what happens is that template gets copied and member names get replaced for each copy of the spreadsheet. So maybe you want to see the children of colas and the children of the East region, and you want to see an income statement for each one. So that's what a cascade does, but you're choosing what they are. Now the cascade on MDX is interesting because what it can do is automatically cascade for a user, makes it easier, right? So maybe you want to have a report that opens up, and based on the region the user selects, they select East or West or South or Central or whatever it happens to be. Maybe you want them to see the children of those members automatically as a replicated sheet within the report. The other thing that's really important about MDX is that you can suppress missing intersections. So maybe you have some sparse data. Maybe you don't sell all products in all regions. And you want to see maybe a report that's got only the regions and product matches where there's data. And you want to see a tab for each one. The MDX Cascade can do that. In addition, MDX is extremely powerful as far as how its member selection capability goes. So you can really do some highly fine-tuned cascades. You could cascade on a UDA, for example, or you could cascade on, attribute values greater than or less than some value. You can do all kinds of really cool things with that. All right. The next one, full text member search. So this one addressed an issue that's been around since, forever at Essbase, since the original solutions conference. This issue was there for customers. It has to do with searching for members. So when you go and you look for member names, you type in to a search dialog. In most products, Classic Add-In, SmartView originally. I'm not sure if SmartView has updated this yet or not, but the member search searched only the front of the string. You could only wildcard the end of the string, in other words. So if you had to know what the member name started with, that was always a problem. And we come up with a solution in Dodeca previously where we extracted information to a relational database, and we did lookups, and then we did some matching in Essbase to make sure that users had security. It was just kind of a pain in the butt. What we found is that using MDX, we can actually use regular expressions in searches. So we're able to implement some full text member search. Now, this was a requirement for one of our customers who has a network of physicians. They have 290,000 plus physicians in their network. And their business case is they wanted to be able to search for physicians whose name was John. Why? I don't know. But the problem is John was embedded in the middle of the string, so they couldn't just do a normal Essbase search. We were able to create that functionality in MDX under the covers, and now we can provide that. And it's really fast, by the way. It searches 290,000 members, returns 1,000 members named with the word John in it in about 2 seconds. So it's really fast. So we're really excited about that. The look and feel has been updated. So we have the ability in Dodeca to apply new looks and feels. We've had customers in the past that said, hey, we love how Dodeca looks, but it's going to look a little bit aged. Can you update the look and feel? So we just have look and feel files for that, and including new toolbar buttons as well. So if you want to see a new look and feel, it's really easy to apply that in Dodeca. Just let us know. We can send you the new file. You can import it in your environment, and you have a new look and feel. It looks like a new application. There's a new launch dialog as well. So the idea for this new launch dialog is that you're able to choose the tenant and the application that you want to launch. Essentially, you launch to a link, and it'll prompt you for the tenant or the application. So it is optional to use that, of course, but it is a nice new option. We've been working for a while on HFM connectivity. And so that's actually been released now as well. And we have a few customers that are up and running. In fact, yesterday, Vertiv Corporation showed a demo of the HFM connector in use at their location. LexisNexis has been a big user as well. But the HFM connector, how it works is we actually fake out HFM on our server. We actually have an alternate version of our Essbase server that makes our client, or Dodeca client, thinks that the server is actually Essbase, when in fact we're going to be talking to an HFM connector. And what happens is we do conversions in the server to convert the Essbase language to the HFM language. So that's been out for a while now. We have a number of customers live with it, and I think it's been pretty popular. Another new little, this kind of a little one, but for certain customers, this next one might be big. So importing columns to create template SQL. That was a big one for certain customers. We had one customer who had, they were doing queries from a data lake. And some of the tables in their data lake, their big data sources had, 120 columns. So they didn't want to have to type in the columns to map the types and that type of thing. So we're now able to go and get those. And finally, there's some workbook scripting editor improvements that make it a lot easier to see more of the workbook scripting. Workbook scripting, by the way, is the extensibility model that we've built into Dodeca. All right. One more thing I'm going to cover before we go to the roadmap, and that's our learning portal. So Tim Faich on our team, he joined our team a couple of years ago, has been really working hard on learning modules for Dodeca. So there are a number of different things we're doing, including this module you see right here. We've teamed with a company in the UK known as KeyTeach. They do a lot of the training at Kscope and that type of thing as well. We teamed with them to build some self-learning videos step by step. So you can go out to the website, you go to the website and sign up. We'll approve you to go in, and you can go in and go through the different steps. So we have about 6 or 8 of these videos up there now that show different facets of Dodeca. First, how to use the product as an end user, how to build reports, how to do some of the scripting, some of the customization. That functionality is out there, and you can go learn that today at a self-pace. The second thing we've done with KeyTeach is that we've teamed with them on the remote training. Now, they have a hands-on labs environment that they can do remotely. It runs through WebEx. It's pretty cool. Actually, each individual participant gets their own hands-on lab, their own environment with their own Essbase, their own Dodeca instance and that type of thing. And you can go through and actually do basically the same types of things you do in the hands-on, or sorry, the self-step learning, except you can do it with a real instance of Dodeca. The step-by-step learning is more of an HTML guided type of learning. So if you want to try it, by the way, send us an email at dodeca@appliedolap.com, and we can create a couple of public hands-on training classes for people who are interested in actually trying Dodeca. There's no risk, no cost, and we welcome to give it a try for yourself. So with that, let's move on to the roadmap. All right. So in the roadmap, obviously, it's safe harbored and that kind of stuff. We kind of copied this boilerplate from Oracle, to tell you the truth. But the idea for the safe harbor is that until we ship it, it's not final. So don't make any decisions based on it. But we're working hard to make sure we do provide everything we talk about in this. So there are some areas that I'm going to talk about in this presentation. If some of you may have seen this presentation before through various private briefings and that type of thing, but I've added a few things to this briefing, so you might want to stay tuned. The target date, first of all, is changed a little bit. So we're targeting first summer and then fall and then late 2020. It may actually slip into next year. We don't know yet. We've taken on a few more things that we didn't expect to take on. Such as doing a bunch of infrastructure work in our server, rewriting some making our server more modular. So those are some things that have added a little bit of time to what we're doing. But let's talk about each one of these in order. So let's talk about infrastructure first. So basically, the infrastructure and what we do in development has changed over the past 2 years or so. Has changed significantly. We've changed source code control environments. We used to use Microsoft SourceSafe. We used it from the start of the company on. We actually were able to extract all that information. We now use GitHub, cloud-based repository. All of our development environments have been updated to the latest Microsoft.NET and Microsoft Visual Studio environments. Our issue tracking, we now have integrated that with GitHub as well. So it's really integrated with our source control system. We used to use a different product called Bugzilla for that. We've implemented a continuous build process, and now whenever we do any type of push to our build servers or to our source code control, it actually automatically builds the system for us. It does the entire build for us. And not only does it do the entire build, but it also does the source code security scan. So we've partnered with a company called Veracode to do security scans. So we're scanning all the components. We actually have 3 different components as part of Dodeca that we're scanning, and we are actively working to resolve any issues that it finds. So that's been a lot of work to get to this point. So, and this is really kind of as we're starting to write the code for the improvement. So the second thing we're going to update is the .NET version. So as of right now, officially we're saying 4.6.2. We're thinking about 4.7.2 in particular, because .NET has some built-in functionality and 4.7.2 that we might like to have. Now, we're not as worried about the .NET version upgrade as we used to be in the early days. In the early days, we used .NET 2.0, and we used it forever. In fact, the currently shipping version is still .NET 2.0. The reason for that is that back in those days, it was really hard to get .NET updated on people's machines. Now with Windows Update and all the security stuff that's going on, we're on Windows and people getting security updates, .NET gets updated for security as well. People are getting the latest versions, and we're seeing version 4.8 out there. In fact, 4.8 is the last version of the .NET framework. Going forward after the 4 series is .NET 5. It's what they call .NET Standard. Is kind of what's become the standard, and it's actually going to run on other operating systems as well. So in any case, we're pretty close to the end of the .NET series. We're going to probably go with 4.6.2, but maybe 4.7.2. The Java requirement. We need to go to Java 1.8, and we did that primarily for security as well. So Essbase on-prem isn't even up to that yet, although everything we've tested does work with Java 1.8 with the on-prem versions and current versions of Essbase. The thing that we really needed to do is for secure sockets, or it's TLS is what it's called, TLS 1.2. Java 1.8 supports that natively. The other versions did not support that. Something I've added into the slide, actually just added just a few minutes ago, is forgot to put a whole slide in about, was Dodeca Shell. So Dodeca Shell is really kind of an infrastructure thing as well. And really what it does is it replaces some of the utilities that we've had. We have a component called the application setup utility, or the ASU, we call it internally. That is a graphical user interface, step through wizard type thing to set up a new application. But it also had some security issues. First of all, it didn't require a username and password. So if you had access to that component, you could go in and do just about anything you wanted to get to the database. Not good. So we've replaced that with Dodeca Shell, and much more secure. You have to know your database username and password to use Dodeca Shell, obviously, but it also is scriptable, and that's a big thing. So being able to script, exports, imports. This also does exports of other objects like comments and that type of thing. It lets you import Dodeca licenses. That can all be scripted. You can say a batch script with a license file, and you can just run it. It's really a nice utility. So I've been using it a lot to set up some of the other things we're implementing, single sign-on. So Dodeca Shell is used for that as well. And finally, we've built in application server support. So application server support is something that we really needed to have for quite some time. All right, let me check the time. All right. So next is SSO support. So SSO support, obviously, single sign-on, improves security. That's a big thing. And we're using a protocol called SAML2. That's our initial protocol for SSO. We may implement other protocols as well. There's something called OAuth that we may implement. We may even implement shared services, single sign-on as well. So a lot of these, like SAML2, the multi-factor authentication is actually set up at the provider. So if you're using Ping or Okta or something like that, you can set up multi-factor authentication. So when you log into Dodeca, for example, you could be prompted or actually send a code through your phone, through a text or something, if you want to have that type of multi-factor authentication. That's now being supported. Also eliminates the need for us to handle user credentials. So Dodeca doesn't ever have to know the user's password. So it goes through the third-party website. And then finally, every call to Dodeca actually has this token attached to it. So we do the authentication on the token, and we stop any traffic that comes in that doesn't have an authenticated token. So let's do a demo of that. So let me put on my glasses and go over here to Microsoft Edge. I'll do a couple different demos. First, I'm going to launch Dodeca 8. Just the normal launch. With Edge, you get that little dialog. This is the new launch dialog, by the way. So I talked about that earlier. This lets you specify the tenant in the application. In this case, my tenant called Starter Kit and application admin is tied to a single sign-on. So what'll happen is the application gets read at the server side. I get prompted for a login. So this login, even though it's being shown inside a dialog, it's actually connected through HTTPS to Jump Cloud, which is our SAML provider. I'll type in my password. We expect that by the time we ship this, we'll have a toolkit from Microsoft that allow us to retain those passwords like you typically see in a browser, right? Do the login, and now I'm in Dodeca. So at this point, by the way, notice I didn't type a password directly into Dodeca itself, right? I can go in and do different things. I'm going to show you in the Essbase connection, we're using impersonation. So we've implemented something called Java Directory Naming Interface, JDNDI, for Essbase, which allows us to store on the server side some credentials that can be used for impersonation. Now, impersonation, how it works is it will take the username that comes through the SSO token, combine it with the admin credentials that are stored at the server side in the application server itself. It's a standard Java thing, and then log into Essbase as a given user. So if I go ahead and test this connection, it should come back and say I'm connected as tim@appliedolap.com. All right. In addition, when I use any report, I go into a report. It's just going to open up and it's going to run. It's not going to prompt me because I've already got my credentials. Right. So I'll pass through impersonation. All right. So that's one launch of Dodeca. Let me show you something slightly different. Now, this is a slightly different launch. It's a different link. This is what we call an SSO launch. So in this case, what will happen, instead of showing a Dodeca dialog first, the server side looks at it and says, oh, you've defined this to be a SAML2 connection. Jump Cloud is your provider. It's going to refer the page over to Jump Cloud. And here I am with my Jump Cloud login. See, my password's already filled in here. And just SSO login. Now I get the normal launch through click once. And what will happen is there's a token attached to the query string. So it comes down automatically. And again, I can go in and just double click. It uses the same impersonation, that type of thing. All right. So that's SSO. Go back to the slides. So next, let's talk about asynchronous and concurrent operations. So they're really two different things, and I want to tell you what they are. So asynchronous is background processing. So probably everybody on this call has used SmartView or in today the classic add-in, or even Dodeca Excel Add-In for Essbase, or even Dodeca currently, the current versions. You do a big retrieve, what happens? You get that not responding, right? And the interface turns white and it can't update. The reason for that is that the retrieval for the Essbase is happening on the thread that also updates the user interface, right? So it's one thread using that. With asynchronous, what happens is we put that into a background thread. So it goes into the background, processes the retrieve in the background. And then when the retrieve comes back, then we grab the UI thread so we can fill the data into the worksheet. So it's a much better process for running applications. So that's one thing. So this was a step that we've been working on really hard for quite some time. We showed some demo of this, oh gosh, a year and a half ago. We basically went back and rewrote it from scratch. And as we're going, we keep learning more things. We've been working through the events. So I talked about workbook scripting and our extensibility. It's event-driven extensibility. We have 115 events or something like that. Each one of those events has to know whether the processing is happening asynchronously or not, right? And if it's happening asynchronously, we have to handle it differently. So that's what a lot of the work's been going on, is making sure those work. And as part of that, we're converting other pieces to async as well, as we need to. So I'll talk about that in a second. Now, concurrent. What's concurrent? Concurrent is the idea of having multiple processes. So think about background processing. It's kind of like taking a ball and throwing it up and down, right? In the background. So you have this ball running, right? Concurrent is kind of like juggling. So you could have 8 balls running at the same time. In other words, in Dodeca speak, if you have a retrieve, a report or a send range that has multiple retrieval ranges or send ranges, they can all be retrieving at the same time. So that can be really important. We have one customer I'm aware of that has they have a cascade report that does like 250 retrievals. Sorry, 250 sheets, 3 retrieves per sheet. It's just unbelievably huge. That thing takes about 90 minutes to run. We think we can get that down to about 12 minutes, 15 minutes maybe. Yeah, we're using concurrent connections, concurrent operations. Better utilizes the server resources they have as well, because most people size their servers, frankly, for overnight processing, right? And during the day, a lot of times it's idle while people are waiting for reports to come back. Well, this will make better use of those. That 90 minutes, by the way, that they have today is much better than it used to be. So they used to have a report sheet and a retrieve sheet, actually 250 report sheets with one retrieve sheet. It was about a 4-hour retrieve. and about an hour to calculate and an hour or two of processing before they could actually use the report. So it's already gotten a lot better, but it's going to be a lot better with concurrent. So obviously it's for improving performance. So I just wanted to mention for comments, as part of the work we've done on events, the comment asynchronous functionality is now done. It hasn't been checked into our code base yet, but the developers completed that. I think the Essbase events are done. There's a few more events are finishing up, and then we'll be able to go with that. Startup will be next. There's a few things we can put in startup. That's going to be a fairly quick thing. And then SQL we'll probably put into our 8.1 or 8.2 release. So let's demonstrate this functionality. So to do that, I'm just going to go ahead and run an ad hoc. There we go. So in this ad hoc, I'm going to go ahead and just make sure I'm running in the operations. I'm going to run all levels. All right. So I'll just move this over here, this over here, this over here like this, right? I'm going to select all those. I'm just going to do a big zoom in. This is going to produce a pretty big sheet, right? So I'll do a zoom in right there. So that's off working, right? So it's zooming in. But while zooming in, I can go to other tabs. I can choose other things, right? Actually looks like it's filling the sheet now. So once it fills the sheet, then it's done. So that took about 9 seconds. Let's go ahead and retrieve it again. Go back over here. I'll retrieve this one for West while this one's still retrieving. So he's down here retrieving. So that's asynchronous operations. All right. Interested to hear comments on that and questions. Commentary. So if you've seen one of these updates in a private briefing or something, I just added the commentary functionality just today, actually this morning I added it to this presentation. So what are we doing with comments? Well, a couple of things. We're working on performance. So a couple of different key things we've been doing there. So the query algorithm has been optimized. We found that internally we were doing way too many queries. So we've cut that down, being able to group things together. So that's going to be vastly different. In my first run of that, I saw things that were 5 times faster. So that was, I don't know, 1,000 comments or something like that, just came back way faster because of the query optimization. We've also made it easier to define key value pairs, particularly when you're doing a grid. If you have, columns and rows of that you want to do grid type of comments, we've actually defined new range names where you can define a row and a column that contain the key value pair keys or key value pair formulas, and we'll actually combine them automatically for you. So it makes it a lot easier. We've also been able to take that into the background and process that in an array in memory, so it's a lot faster. So the definition as well has changed because we do have now a comment range editor. I'm not going to swear that this interface won't change a bit again, but the key value pairs are often defined through formulas. This is actually going to help you build those formulas. User interface. A couple of things here I kind of like. Now this first one, I did have this in some slides previously. So we have a new selector for text block. The whole idea is if you want to just type in something, you're doing a SQL query, you just want to be able to pattern match something, you can just type it in. It doesn't have any type of validation or anything like that. But that's something we lacked. And frankly, we didn't have the vision that people might want to just type in free-form text and do a SQL query, right? I don't know why we didn't think that. But anyway, that's been added. And also, if you have a list for like a drop-down, you can source that from a worksheet range. You can actually store an Excel worksheet and in a repository and call that to actually fill the list if you don't want to fill it from Essbase or something like that. So that's a nice feature. But the reason I really added this slide back is this new concept we have called floating views. So Dodeca is an MDI interface, right? So it's the whole idea is it's an interface that's got tabs inside of the interface for each report, right? And let's go back and actually just do a live demo on this one. So you've got different tabs, right? And so the thing is with these tabs, we could drag them around before, right? But now what we can do is if I drag it, I'm going to right mouse click. This is how it used to be. I used to be able to drag it to different locations, right? Yeah, I guess I didn't test that before. I used to be able to put a new tab group or something like that. That's where you could drag and drop that. Now you can tell it to float. So if I want to have it drag and float, I can drag it out and it floats out. And if I have another window, I can put it on another window. So I can have multiple monitors going at the same time. And we think this will be useful, particularly for people who might be doing, development in Dodeca, as well as analyzing multiple reports. So you can put, this report on one monitor and this report on another monitor. I've got another monitor up there, so I can look in both of them. So I'll bring this one back in. By the way, you double click on the toolbar or on the title bar, and they go and pop back in. All right. So we'll go back here and we'll skip that demo I recorded. Workbook Analyzer and Cleaner. So this one's a big one as well. So this is something I'm going to cover in a lot more detail tomorrow during my spreadsheet design talk. It really isn't, the talk isn't focused on the analyzer so much as it is the problems that cause us to think about building the analyzer. So the thing that we found is that we're out at customers, we're starting to see these workbooks that had really poor quality, and a lot of accumulated junk. And so I came up with this name for it. I call it Excel zombie disease. And really what it is, I started out looking at things like, looking actually under the covers in the Excel file and finding links and Excel styles and range names and that kind of stuff. And I started writing something in VBA that might be able to analyze it, right? This is just kind of a proof of concept is what it originally was. But once we realized we couldn't actually see all the linked information, Excel links live forever. That's one of the big problems. That's what Excel zombie disease really is. Excel links, once you create a workbook link, you break the link, the data stays, doesn't go away. And there's no way in the user interface to see it. There's no way to go clean it out. So that's really what zombie disease is. So let me show you an example. So this was something we got from a customer. I've changed some of the names so you can't recognize who it is, obviously. But this was a real workbook, right? So you notice that this goes out to K25, and there's only one worksheet. Should be pretty small, right? If you look on the disk, this worksheet was 19 meg. Holy cow, what the heck is that? Why is this worksheet with 19 meg? There's nothing in it, right? I mean, if you go search around, you can't find anything there. There's no hidden sheets or anything, right? So this is what kind of spurred us to write this thing. I wrote the VBA version and determined that we couldn't see these links that were hidden and that type of thing. We actually had to go to the XML layer down in the zip file. If you know the XLSX file format is actually a glorified zip file. You can change the extension to .zip. You can look inside of it. You can see the file streams. We can read those file streams. We're actually reading them and modifying them in our analyzer and cleaner. So let me show you what this analyzer does. So this is a little video I took a while back. Can't show you this one live as easily because with customer workbooks that we see that have all these problems, I have to hide things. I have to hide range names, that kind of stuff, to hide any identifying information. So in this case, we're going to choose that workbook. So this is built into the toolbar. This is also built into the Excel, I would say the Dodeca template designer. So you can do a clean. You can actually clean all the stuff we find that's bad. You can actually clean, define names as well if you do a pattern match. What happens when you do a clean, by the way, it creates a new version of the file with this extension cleaned on the end by default. So we're not going to change the files that you guys have. We don't want to be responsible for changing your files. We want you to clean them, take a look, salvage what you can, maybe reuse a new book, make sure the formulas are right, that type of thing. So, all right. So that's what it did. But let's look inside. It actually produced this Analyze Results workbook. So in the next tab, this is what that workbook looks like. So if you want to see what's inside the file, if you're curious what made up that 19 meg, by the way, there's only one worksheet, has 275 cells in it. That was the last cell according to Excel. If you start looking, there's most of that size right there. It's a link dating back from 2016, from January 2016. There's some information from 2005, some from 2009. If you look up a little bit, I'm going to actually just roll that back just a second, stop it. If you look right here, there's a link to an A drive. So anybody remember the A drives, the floppy disks? Probably some people in this call aren't even old enough to remember floppy disks, right? So that was somebody linked to a floppy disk back in the day. These are bad range names. So you see range names as well that have those same old things. These are actually links probably into those old linked files. So, all right. So that's the type of thing that we're seeing in these workbooks. Part of my talk tomorrow is going to talk about all the different things we found and some of the extents that we've seen. We ran this analyzer on 602 workbooks that I happen to have in my customer directories. just to see what we'd find. And we found some pretty horrendous things. So we have some that are actually worse than that. I've actually seen a workbook recently that had 106,000 range names in it, 363 external links that were dead. So, all right, so let's move on from that. Check my time. All right, about 5 minutes left. So let's talk about workbook scripting improvements. So the workbook scripts, a few things we've done there. So one of my favorites is this workbook scripts list. And the whole idea behind this is that you can write utility scripts. And what we saw in some of our customers, we saw, customers writing utility scripts, and like a script maybe that would hide rows and columns that had a true or a number 1 in the first row or first column. It was just a script they just ran through it every time the report was done building, the after build event, in other words, and it just closed them up for them. So they can, in development, they could leave it open and unhidden. In a runtime, they'd actually close it all up so they didn't see all the hidden stuff, all the Essbase retrieve, member names, all that kind of stuff, right? This workbook scripts list, what it does, it lets you take these utility scripts and attach their own events to them. Because in the old version, the current version actually, you actually have to call those utility scripts using an execute procedure. You're calling a subroutine, in other words. What workbook scripts list does is let you have these utility scripts that have their own events. These events get wired up, and we also guarantee the order in which they fire. So the order in which the scripts appear in the list is the order in which those events will fire in those scripts. All right. So you have multiple scripts in a single view is the whole idea. Something else we've been working pretty hard on is IntelliSense. So a lot of places, for example, in this little example over on the right, we're looking for an Excel range name, or you could type in an address or something like that, or a function for that matter that returns an Excel address range. But in this case, a lot of times that particular argument in workbook script is a range name. So we made it easier. We put in a drop down, so you can start typing, it'll autocomplete, that type of thing. So that's coming in this new version. Also, colors. Colors were kind of a bane of my existence in workbook scripting for a while, because we use the color index, and that's how Excel uses it as well. Except we never knew which color was mapped to which index. You didn't know which index to use. It was kind of a pain. So now you can actually pick a color. We can assign a color to a cell. We've added some new events. I think there's only one event been added. Some new methods and functions as well. And finally, last thing I'll talk about is the Oracle Cloud Marketplace. So as you've probably seen in some of the sessions earlier today, Oracle is, as you know, they're going into the cloud big time, right? With Essbase, and Essbase 19c is out there in the Oracle Cloud Marketplace today. It's pretty easy to install Essbase out there. There are a few steps you have to go through. What we want to do with Dodeca is make it easy to do the same thing with Dodeca. So we want to make it so that you can deploy Dodeca, either the Dodeca service itself or the Dodeca Essbase service, which, for performance purposes, you definitely want that to be close to your Essbase server. So if you're using Oracle on the cloud, or Essbase in the cloud, you want to use Dodeca Essbase service out there. Our team can deploy those today on OCI for you, but we want to make it so you can automatically go deploy it yourself, and you can change the shape of it. If you need more processors, you can go provide more processors and just provision them on the cloud. We also plan to do a Dodeca and Essbase combination so that you can provision Dodeca and Essbase on the same CPUs. Now we think for economic reasons, it might be easier to do that for the customers who have the BYO or bring your own license type of agreements with Oracle, so that you can use just many CPUs as you want. You're paying your old Oracle maintenance for on-prem, and you're basically using a cloud server and paying for the server resource and not for Essbase itself. So we're going to provide a couple of different options for this. All right. So the Dodeca services and this things, the licensing will be through our normal licensing, by the way. So you'll go and provision your server. You'll pay Oracle for the server. The Dodeca licenses for Dodeca Essbase, that type of things, just for your normal Dodeca license. So they carry over. You can use them on-prem or cloud. Doesn't matter to us where you use them. All right. So with that, at the end, I think I finished just the right amount of time, and we're ready for questions. And don't forget, by the way, to go out and play the little answer one question out there and register for the $200 MasterCard gift card. So are there any questions? Or should I be able to see them someplace?
None currently in the chat right now, but we can wait a few minutes.
Okay.
You're apparently very thorough.
I try. So I'd be interested in hearing from people who, about, maybe if they want to just put in the question window, have you guys seen Excel workbooks growing? Is this workbook analyzer something that looks interesting to you? The cleaner in particular.
One just came in. Any chance
okay.
with getting connections to PBCS or FCCS?
Okay, so the question, any chance of having connections to PBCS, FCCS? And the answer is yes, there is a chance of that. I don't have a time frame yet for that. The reason I don't have a time frame for it is that we're kind of waiting on Oracle for some stuff. So let me actually look at that question. We're waiting for Oracle to really kind of finalize what they're doing with their SmartView REST API. Now we do have a prototype of we have a POC of talking to PBCS or EPM Cloud. It's fairly limited though. I mean, essentially what we can do with our REST API today is we can say, here's a grid. Here are the rows, here are the columns. Retrieve it and give us the data back. Give us that slice of data, right? I think that the call is actually called extract slice, right? And we can put that into grid. But the thing is, it's not very powerful. We can do some metadata things. We found that the metadata functionality, like getting children of a member and that type of thing, actually takes enhanced privileges. So we have to engineer around that. We think, by the way, if we do zoom in, that type of thing, we actually had to go out and get the member names, expand the grid, do a zoom, and we wrote a library to actually do all that. So we want it to work more like what SmartView looks like. Their REST API, they're going to provide zoom in and pivot and all those types of things. So we want to be able to leverage that. In addition, I heard for the first time just yesterday that they're finally looking to do MDX with the REST API and in the EPM Cloud in particular. Dodeca is pretty useful with MDX. I mean, you can do some really cool things with MDX. We do a lot of what if type calculations using like if you want to do a market reorg type thing. Let me just show you. It's probably easier to show you. If you want to do like a market reorg or something like that, you can use MDX to say I want to take and combine these three regions and put those into a income statement. See what my income statement looks like. Or maybe I want to take the East region and the West region and combine them, except I want to exclude Florida, right? And I want to see how the COLAs would perform for that. So this income statement is actually being generated on the fly using MDX. So it's adding these two members together, subtracting that member, and then using that as a filter in the report, along with COLA and actual, to actually produce this income statement. So with MDX coming to PBCS or to EPM Cloud, I should say, we're much more excited about that, and hopefully we'll be able to do more. We'll be working with Oracle pretty soon to make sure that they can.
Is there a YouTube link where you show the zombie Excel files part? That would be so useful for almost every client and a great way to advertise for applied OLAP. You're currently muted right now, Tim.
Okay, sorry about that. I lost audio for a moment. Were there any more questions?
Is there a YouTube link where you show the zombie Excel files part? That would be so useful for almost every client and a great way to advertise for applied OLAP.
No, there's not yet, but this is a good idea. So we can certainly do something like that. Yeah, I think the sessions that we have for solutions will be online as well. And probably the first half of my session tomorrow on spreadsheet design is going to talk about in more detail the Excel zombie disease and what we're seeing out there. All right. But we could certainly do a video for that.
No new ones in yet.
All right. If there are any other questions, I'll hang on for a couple more minutes if you want, but. Or not. So. All right,
Yeah,
well.
we have time. I mean, the Ask the Experts panel starts in about 10 minutes, so
Okay.
you have time until that.
All right. We'll be hanging around if there are any more questions. I'll see you guys at Solutions 2029, right? I'll still be here, I'm sure. So.
Of course you will. You're not going anywhere.
I have too much fun. I love what I do. So, all right. I guess that's it. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Tim.